I have no idea who this guy is. He's got more subs than I do. He's got about 41.8k, so he's a fairly big YouTuber. But he made a video recently called it's from May 17th, called "Why Forced Diversity Doesn't Work." So I guess we'll go ahead and we'll watch this. First, we gotta clarify, what is forced diversity? Because somebody summarized the point of this video to me when they suggested it to me, and the argument was that forced diversity doesn't work in fiction and like fictional stories, right? But that doesn't really make any sense. For one, when you were talking about a fictional story, you justify the things in the story by making it make sense in that world. Like, that's the point of it. Like, there's no such thing as forced anything in a fictional setting. When you're writing a book or writing any type of story, you have to justify certain things being included by making it make sense if you want to maintain immersion, or your justification can just be because it exists, right? So I don't think the base of this argument is going to be that there is some sort of moral problem where you ruin art by having forced diversity. What even is forced diversity? Let's find out. Let's watch the video.
Hey folks, David Stewart here. Forced diversity. It just doesn't work. And I'd like to tell you why it doesn't work. The main reason, and indeed the essential reason, is that it detracts from the story. That is the dividing line between diversity, which is
okay. Go ahead and I'll let him finish.
Forced into a story, and diversity, which is incidental to a story or maybe essential to whatever story you happen to be telling.
So here's the question: where is the line drawn between forced diversity and non-forced diversity? What diversity, like, what makes it forced? If you're writing some piece of fiction, how is it forced? What makes it forced diversity? Is he going to define it? And secondly, how does it ruin... Listen, we're not going to ad hom, okay? How does it ruin the piece of work to have this forced diversity? Can you point to a single example of a piece of media where, like, let's look at Ghostbusters 2016, for example. Probably, like, the go-to example of forced diversity. Like, oh, they just made the Ghostbusters women for, like, as a cash grab for virtue signaling, blah, blah, blah. If you made them all dudes, that movie's still gonna suck, sweaty, disgusting asshole. Because that movie was terribly written, and it just wasn't funny. It wasn't because it was all women. It was just a shitty movie with terrible writing. The writing wouldn't have been made even slightly better if you made them all men. Point to one example. I just need one example of a piece of media that the writing and the story would be objectively better if the main character wasn't... I mean, well, this is the thing, though, right? Because, like, when they talk about forced diversity, they're talking about non-white people. There are two genders, two races, and two sexualities, two, like, reactionaries that are, like, white reactionary types within, like, these nerdy spheres. White and political. Man and political. Straight and political. Or white and diversity. Man and diversity. Straight and diversity, right? So the implication here is that being white, straight, and male, respectively, that is normal. That is the baseline where you're supposed to be, ideally. And anything other than that is, like, diversity. And you damn well better fucking justify it if you're going to have any women in a setting, or any black people or brown people in a setting, or especially, God forbid, any LGBT people in a setting. Oh, you better have a damn good explanation for that, and that explanation better involve them suffering to some degree. Like, the story better be them, like, getting beaten and raped or whatever for being gay. Like, that better be the reasoning behind it. Like, that's generally the line of logic we go down with these types.
So my definition of forced diversity, which is a great place to start to examine some of these deeper reasons, is forced diversity is the inclusion of characters in media that are members of social, ethnic, or sexual groups for no discernible story reason.
You don't miss! So, more or less, the base level of this argument is that white, straight, and male, or just being like that, is normal. Anything else means that's like political. That is that is that is diversity. That is when you're doing something that you have to justify. You have to have a damn good justification for including anybody of that particular identity in the story.
Meaning you are exposing the traits or exposing parts of their identity which really have nothing to do with the plot itself. So including a trans woman.
Let's go ahead and continue.
Woman in a story that has nothing to do with her journey as a trans woman is kind of forced diversity. If you're writing a story,
how is it forced? For one, there's no such thing as forced diversity. I'm gonna be honest with you here. Hot take: forced diversity isn't a thing. If you're an artist and you're making some kind of art, you're not forcing anything. There's like a very basic understanding of how creating art works. Like, you are creating this world, you have all the power over it. You didn't force those mountains in the distance to exist in your fantasy story, right? You didn't force magic to exist in your fantasy story. Magic exists in your fantasy story because you decided magic was going to exist. If the main character is a trans woman in this fantasy story, nothing about the plot, nothing about the main end goal of it has anything to do with her being trans, doesn't matter. It literally does not matter. It's not forced. Doesn't work that way. That's not how writing fiction works. These people exist in real life. Their existence in real life, they don't exist for like a reason. Like, do you think every trans person that exists in real life, or every like black person, has to justify their blackness and like their reason for existing? Of course not. Then why does it have to be that way in fiction, in media? Isn't art supposed to imitate life? Wouldn't like basically anybody who knows or cares anything about art agree with this? Art imitates life. These groups exist in real life. They're obviously, realistically, going to be represented in media that you make. And there is no such thing as forced diversity when you are the one creating these worlds and creating these fictional stories.
Story about a trans woman struggling to find acceptance, of course, that's relevant. That's part of the story. There's going to be trans characters. But if you're halting a story to then talk about...
So this is actually something a lot of like trans people complain about The Last of Us 2 for, and I think it's really stupid. By the way, Last of Us 2 spoilers if you care. Okay, I'm gonna do Last of Us 2 spoilers here, and they'll be over when my hand drops, okay? When my hand is no longer on the screen, that's when the spoilers are over, okay? In The Last of Us 2, there is a character named Lev, and he's a trans dude, and his story arc as a whole is about him trying to escape his like abusive, transphobic, religious fanatic mother with his sister, trying to escape and get away from them. And there's a few points in the game where he gets like dead named by the bad guys that you're like trying to escape from, and you know, you're trying to, and that's his story arc, right? Like, a lot of his story is trying to escape the abuse that he faces due to the fact that he is trans. And and while I don't agree with this take, a lot of trans people complained that his story or his character was based entirely on suffering. Not really true, doesn't make a lot of sense, but that is the point out there. So I will admit, right off the bat, there are a lot of trans people, actually, okay, no more spoilers, we're good. So I have to say, right off the bat, there are a lot of trans people that wouldn't like most representation of trans people in media to just be, like, a story about their struggles as a trans person. Yeah. I have no problem with Lev's story, honestly, relate to him a lot in the game. Yeah, I know, I think the people complaining about Lev's story are like probably didn't play the game. Like, honestly, they probably saw the clip of Lev getting like dead named and said, "Oh no, this game's transphobic. It's torture porn." It's like, okay, dude. All right, let's continue. No more spoilerinos for The Last of Us 2.
A character is trans, that is an example of forced diversity. Now, the response to the left of this usually is, trans people exist. Why can't we have a character be trans?
Yeah.
And the answer is because it's not relevant necessarily, right? So the thing...
This isn't a response to that. This literally isn't a response to that. How much, like, okay, this is like basic world building understanding, right? Imagine a story or a fictional universe where every single aspect of that fictional universe or story is only there if it's relevant to the overall story. Imagine how fucking empty and hollow that bit of media would be. You know what I've been getting into a lot lately? Just to show off some like actual good world building, like really good world building that I've discovered. I've been getting into Warhammer. I just recently, a few days ago, bought Warhammer, Total War Warhammer 2 and Total War Warhammer 1, as well as like a shit ton of the DLCs. Getting really into Warhammer lore as well. I listen to like the videos while I play it. And I've been listening to a lot of lore videos about it, and holy shit, is it an expansive, extremely diverse universe. You've got fucking high elves, you've got rat people, you got zombies, you got like human here, I'll show you guys. You got like human like robots, like the Adeptus Mechanicus and all that. You got like the Empire, you got dragons, you got like, look at this. It is an extremely expansive massive universe with a ton of story that is mostly irrelevant to the main like plot of Warhammer. Like if you just consider like the basically story arcs and structures within the story of it. So is it forced diversity that some of the races and some of the creatures within Warhammer lore aren't really relevant, I guess you could say? No, it's not. Because having aspects to your story that are irrelevant to the plot or the main motivation of your story only does good for your story. It helps flush out the game world. Or not the game world. In the case of this, it's a game world. But helps flush out the world of the story. This is basic, like, basic understanding of storytelling, I feel like.
Things about characters which are relevant to the plot are things that you actually want to develop about them, and the things which aren't relevant to the plot you really got to cut out. So this is a little bit of advice for you writers who are thinking about writing novels or screenplays. If it doesn't push the plot forward, if it's not,
no, probably don't take writing advice from this guy. I'm gonna be honest with you here.
Not relevant to the events of the story, it probably needs to get cut out. Things that are superfluous in stories usually need to get cut out. And if a character's sexuality, for instance, is not relevant to the plot at all, it's something that probably needs to be axed out.
Wait, so are you arguing they should be asexual? Like, not attracted to anybody? Because, you know, it's irrelevant to the plot. They should be asexual, right? Is that what? Hey, listen, ace rights, chat. Can we get like an ace rights going on? Like, let's get a fucking a combo with those flags going on. Hey, we got it right there. So the main issue that I have with this is like a very fundamental, incorrect assumption that it is normal or that it is correct to be straight, and if you are gay or LGBT or like not white or anything like that, then you're like different, and that's like your existence has to be justified if it's going to be in media. How shitty does that have to be? Like, how shitty is it that like straight white dudes don't have to justify their existence in media, right? Like, if somebody like, I'm straight, I'm white, I'm a dude. If I were in a piece of media, literally nobody would be making videos or any argument about why'd they have to make him white, dude? Like, why'd they have to make him white and straight? Like, it's not even relevant to the story that he's white. It's not even relevant to the story that he's straight. Why would they do that? Like, why would they force that into the game? Literally nobody does this. It's only if you're like any kind of minority, right? Any kind of minority. That sucks if you're like any kind of minority, because then any of the media that you consume, if you want to see representation of people that look like you in it, they have to like fucking like justify their existence. It's so fucking stupid. This line of thought is toxic. Or no, this line of thought is like poison to like good storytelling.
And if you're trying to force in representation of some group, it's going to be very apparent because it's going to stand in the way of the story. And so that's...
Please give me one example of a story that would be better if you made... That was, like, really bad. That would be better if you made, like, most of the characters or all the characters straight white men. Please. Like, give me one example where the story would actually be good and the writing would suddenly be good again. Because I promise you, not a single example of that exists.
Really, the big way that you are going to judge that tree is by that fruit. is this diversity harming the story, or is it incidental, or is it, part of the story, some essential part of the story that you're trying to tell? Just to give an example, I'll give you two great examples here. So if we look at Morgan Freeman playing the character Red in Shawshank Redemption, Red, as written, is originally Irish. So casting him with Morgan Freeman, a black actor, is that a problem? Well, the Irishness of Red is not really essential to the plot. It's just a trait. It's just kind of incidental. And so because it's not essential,
he literally mentions it at one point in the movie when he's played by Morgan Freeman. I'm pretty sure at one point in the movie, Red says he's Irish. It's been like a few years since I watched Shawshank Redemption last. Hold on, let's check. Hold on. Shawshank Redemption, Red, Irish. I'm curious.
Thank you. Mr.
Red. Name's Red.
Red. Why do they call you that?
Maybe it's because I'm Irish.
Yeah. So it is kind of relevant to the story. They talk about it. Also, this is like, even if this was, like, even if the argument... Yeah, fucking Hibernians. Even if this was an argument here, or even if this was true, right? Like, the argument that, like, Red being Irish had nothing to do with this story, this isn't an argument against forced diversity. It's just not. Like, we've already gone over this a million times. There is no such thing as forced diversity in fiction that you are writing. Everything in it is technically forced, right? You're making magic exist if you choose to have magic exist. You are creating a fictional world with a fictional story, presumably. So everything in it is justified by the fact that you are making it. Now, granted, you can have a bad story by including things that just don't make sense in that universe. Like, I can understand that, right? But having diversity in it isn't generally like... Okay, let's say you have a universe where where there was, like, a big nuclear, like, bomb that happened and like, destroyed the world, and everybody is, like, a mutant zombie, but then, like, along comes, like, a completely normal, like... just a normal human, like, black trans woman, who is just, like, not a horrible nuclear zombie mutant. Now, that would be weird, and probably take people out of the immersion of the story, but not because she's a black trans woman, but because she's not a mutated nuclear zombie, like everybody else that has this, as has been established in this little fictional universe we've made up here, has been established to be. That would be the bad writing. Or what could take away from the story, not the fact that she's, like a black trans woman.
Essential to the plot, and the story is really about Red and his friendship with Andy Dufresne. It could be played by a different ethnic group if you wanted to. You could have had any ethnic group that would have fit during that time.
I'm sorry, but only Morgan Freeman could have played Red. I'm sorry, Morgan Freeman's Morgan Freeman playing Red and Morgan Freeman narrating Shawshank Redemption increases the quality of the movie like tenfold. It's insane.
Actually play the part of Red, and the story would still have functioned just as well, because the Irishness of Red is not really what is essential to the plot. Compare that to casting Idris Elba as Roland Deschain.
No, you don't want to. No, you don't want to get into this, motherfucker. You don't want to get into Dark Tower shit, my dude. You don't want to get into the Dark Tower shit with me, my dude. You just set off my fucking trap card, dude. You just set off my fucking trap card. Oh no, he does not want to do this. All right, here we go, boys.
The Dark Tower movie, and you have the opposite, which is this is something that could actually detract from the story big time. Roland's being white is very clear in the books, but more than that, it's essential to the plot.
Yes. He's not wrong here. Roland being white is actually essential to the plot in some stories. We'll probably wrap this is going to be such a long rant, because he's going to just reiterate the same thing over and over again. So this is how we're going to wrap up this section of the story, okay? So the Dark Tower, if you don't want spoilers, then you don't have to listen. The Dark Tower is a fantastic book series by Stephen King. It is about an alternate universe where humanity has basically been blown back in time, and it stars the main character, Roland Duchesne, who is a gunslinger. He's kind of like a cowboy knight type dude from like a long-lost great civilization that's like since crumbled into dust, and his job, or what he is doing, is chasing the main villain of the story, the Man in Black, sort of across the world, trying to find a thing called the Dark Tower. That is his goal. He wants to get to it, and he wants to try to get to it before the Man in Black does. And in this story, there's like all sorts of magic and shit like that. And Roland is described multiple times as being white. He's supposed to look, he's like Clint Eastwood is like the inspiration for his character, right? And it's even like more important. Yeah, it's even more important. Not Roland Flagg, it's Randall Flagg, Dylan Malkuth. Even more important, there's a character named Detta Walker, or Odetta, which is she has like multiple personality disorder, and she's usually pretty nice, but one of her multiple personality disorder versions of her is Odetta, and she is really, really, really racist against white people. She's from, I believe, the 50s. She's from the Civil Rights era, and she really doesn't like white people. And there are some really funny and really good segments of the book of interactions between her and Roland and Eddie, who's another character, particularly in the second book, of Odetta, the alternate personality, freaking out and being super racist, and then her flipping back over to her normal self and like not being racist anymore. It's really, really, it's good. It was something that a lot of people wanted to see adapted to the screen, and I would completely agree with the statement he's making here. If the case was that the Dark Tower movie was an adaptation from the books. So here, we'll go ahead and we'll watch the trailer for the Dark Tower. Oh, he shouldn't have set off an alarm with this one. Oh, he didn't even, he fucked up here. Hold on. So you would be surprised to see, if you were expecting a movie adaptation of the books, you'd expect So you would expect... That's a cool shot. So you would expect Roland in this movie... We'll go ahead and we'll...
Hello.
Wait, why? Why is that there? So we'll go ahead and turn off the sound and play the main thing. So you'd expect Roland to be white in a recreation of the Dark Tower, or a adaptation from book to movie of the Dark Tower. The problem is, this movie is not an adaptation of the Dark Tower books to a movie, which I was disappointed about. That's what disappointed me. This is a sequel to the Dark Tower. Big spoilers for the Dark Tower, but at the very end, Roland makes it to the tower, and he's forced to repeat his entire journey over and over and over and over again, with small things different every time. Little, like, different things. And that's how the Dark Tower books end. This story is him on a different reset, a whole nother timeline, with a few things different. He has the Horn of Arthur Eld, which is a pretty big deal. It's what he needed to, like, do the thing he needed to do, right? I don't remember every single little thing. He meets Jake in a different way. He never meets Eddie or Detta, and he's also black. So this isn't the same Roland, technically, that we see in the books. This is sort of like his soul reincarnated, more or less, into a new cycle of himself, having to, like, go on his journey again. But this time, supposedly, because there's supposed to be a sequel to this movie, he's actually going to succeed. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm disappointed that we never got to see Detta, and we didn't get to see Eddie, and we didn't get to see all of that. And if this was an adaptation from the books to the movies, I would be upset, because then, you know, if he's black, then there would be... Unless they made, like, Detta white, and she was, like, racist to black people, maybe that would work. But, if they just got rid of that whole element, I would be disappointed, because, you know, it was a little pretty... I'll admit, it was a very important part of the story. Like, most of the second book is them stranded on a beach, and like, Eddie and Roland and Detta trying to like, or Odetta trying to get along and form sort of a team so they can get out of the situation that they're in. So I would understand that, but holy shit, did he fuck up by trying to compare making Roland black in the movie to making Roland black or to Roland in the book, because it's not even the same character technically. It is the dumbest fucking comparison and demonstrates to me how out of his depth this guy is. Holy shit, I love it. I fucking love it when a reactionary tries to use a piece of media that I know a lot about as an argument. I fucking love it when they do that, because that's when it's fucking over for them. Because they make it so evident how little about the media they're using as an example they know. Because literally anybody who finished the last Dark Tower book would fucking know that the movie isn't a film adaptation. And isn't supposed to be. Regardless, though. Is my AC freaking out? My AC is making some weird noises. Anyway. This video was pretty fucking cringy. Yeah, it's like, no, it was like Eric Stryker when he said jazz wasn't real music in a debate with Destiny, and Destiny, like, went full Godstiny mode on him. That was, yeah, that was pretty good. But yeah, the idea of forced diversity is fucking stupid. There is no such thing. If you are making a fictional world or a fictional universe, everything that you include in that fictional universe is justified by the fact that you are basically the god of said universe as you are creating it, as the creator of this fiction, and the only mistakes you can make are including things that take the viewers out of the world the immersive world you're trying to build for them, that may affect their viewing experience, or their reading, or their playing, whatever type of art, whatever world you're creating. That is when it becomes a problem. And this just generally isn't the case when it comes to including marginalized groups in these bits of media, unless the person is racist. So yeah. That's basically what I had to say.